Welcome, Titan 6 Actual and 3GX Mental Performance. Welcome you to breaking barriers beyond the finish line. I'm your co-host, Lou Greco from Titan 6 Actual, and alongside me is the brilliant Sarah Grippi-Snyder from 3GX. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the human spirit, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. So whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, or simply someone seeking inspiration, this show is for you. We'll explore stories of triumph, setbacks, and unwavering determination that propels us forward. As a retired Army Engineer Reservist, I've faced challenges on the battlefield and beyond, and now I'm on a mission to help you discover your inner type.
And I'm Sarah, also known as Coach Grip, a mental performance coach. Together, we dive into the psychology of peak performance, mindset strategies, and how to overcome mental blocks. Whether you're aiming for the podium or simply striving for personal growth, we've got you covered. Join us as we explore the intersection of physical and mental strength, share expert insights, and celebrate those who go beyond the finish line. So grab your headphones, lace up your sneakers, and let's break barriers together. Remember, it's not just about crossing the finish line, it's about what lies beyond. Welcome to Breaking Barriers Beyond the Finish Line. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes where we'll feature incredible guests, share practical tips, and ignite the fire within you.
All right, guys, we are here joined with Josh Chessman. See, I say it wrong already. Josh Chessman. It's like the roll of the tongue just ended up happening. But anyways, I met Josh it was the 2022 World Champion in Canada, and I actually had a tent up, and I was showcasing what 3GX was about, and I actually was racing, and I came back, and that's when I met Josh. He was like, holy crap, what is 3GX? And that's how me and him got to meet. So 2 years later, I told him I was going to create a podcast. I got to meet Lou last year, and now here we are. And I want Josh, you to explain who you are, but he's a father, he's a coach, he's an entrepreneur, and he's just a fantastic guy. So Josh, would you like to explain yourself a little bit more in detail for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm 35, and I have a almost 5-year-old son. I live in Victoria, BC. Yeah, so I've been in Canada. I've been in Canada my whole life, essentially. And my coaching career has morphed a lot over the 14, 15 years I've been a coach. It started out as, pretty simple cookie cutter personal training, and it's now morphed into offering, gene testing, blood testing, getting really into the kind of the crux and the ways to then optimize people's health, fitness, energy. And I'm just in a lot of ways, I'm like at the beginning of my career, which feels amazing.
Yeah, evolved a lot, because when I first met you, what was your coaching more like whenever, it was back in 2022?
Yeah, so I had just moved from Ontario to BC. That was a really big move in my life. I'll kind of get into the details of that. So I was an established trainer in Peterborough, Ontario. I worked my way up. I ended up getting the top personal trainer in Canada. So I had like some pretty solid accolades. I was well known. And then I ended up buying a gym with a friend of mine, which was actually a great idea. It was really cool. It was actually my first real step into the entrepreneurial space. Can't really call myself as a trainer working for a corporation, not really an entrepreneur. So that was like one of the first things I did that was majorly entrepreneurial. Then when I got out here to Victoria, which was at the within the middle of COVID 3 years ago now, I started in a new province. Like I knew 3 people. My 2-year-old son at the time was one of those people. So no one knew me. I had no relevance. I was starting over in a lot of ways in my life. So how that took shape in my coaching was that I started to train those existing clients that still wanted to work with me online, and just started to build, programs and systems out so that I could still work with those folks that I really cared about. And then also opened the opportunity up, much like it did for a lot of people at the beginning or through the middle of COVID, where all of a sudden online was much more of a possibility. So my
Mhm.
business went from being in person, 1 hour, one-on-one, to this kind of plethora of examples of what online coaching could look like. And that was probably the biggest shift, in person to then mainly online at that time.
Mhm. Yeah, and with that online type of practice, let's just explain the difference between the challenges and some of the benefits of being able to work online.
Yeah, so some of the benefits are that, I mean, timing is much easier, right? There's no
Mhm.
travel to the facility for whoever it is. So right away you're saving some time. You flip on your camera, your computer's there. Most people are working from a computer nowadays anyway, so there's that ease. The other benefit from a coaching standpoint is I can deliver content in different ways,
Mhm.
right? Like as much as you guys know. But my clients started, I would email them certain things, or I'd attach things, or I created like some online courses where they could then view content via video that I had recorded. So there were a lot more accessible tools and resources for those clients once I went online. And it really allowed me to differentiate. So from the coach standpoint, it allowed me to differentiate what I was offering and how I offered it.
Mhm.
And from the client standpoint, they see it as, okay, I'm getting a lot of value. It looks a little different. If I'm used to the one-on-one personal trainer in person, this looks a little different, but I'm still getting a lot of value. And I'd say the biggest shift, or one of the downfalls to coaching online, is, I mean, you're a good coach, Sarah. So it's like, if we're coaching movement, we're definitely very limited to how good the quality of the camera is on that side and the position of their body. And like, there's a lot we can't do. There's no tactile, there's no like kinesthetic cueing, there's no like me spinning around and being like, well, where's their pelvis? Like, what position? So it is limiting in that nature. And honestly, that hasn't been a big issue for me as it stands, working mainly online now, because there's ways that we've been able to move around it and adjust to accommodate their goals.
So you're touching on the physical side, but you're a human optimization coach, right? That's
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
is that your like official title?
You know what? Human optimization coach, I mean, I have that written down. It usually begs the question of what the fuck is that? So I mean,
True.
I am a health coach, and how I'm like learning to phrase this for people. I'm a
Yeah.
health coach and I help people optimize their health, fitness, and energy, or their health, fitness, and mindset. Right?
Yeah.
There's these pillars.
So
Yeah.
I've heard right. I've heard you say it as more of like a holistic or a whole body approach, and I love that. I love that idea. It's kind of the it's one of the pillars for
Yeah.
Titan Six Actual. So if if the tactile side is a challenge, but you also haven't found that to be too limiting, and so if you're focusing a lot on the holistic person, um, how do you find that as a do you find challenges at all with how you deliver content that is focused more towards instead of physical, maybe it's emotional or mindset driven content or things that you're working through with clients?
Yeah. It's a great question. I'd say it doesn't feel very difficult to deliver that. So there's this standpoint of, well, being a coach, so there's this human interaction, and I'm trying my best to understand where this client is at, and I'm trying my best to communicate well and interpret what they're saying and body language, etc. There's that whole just communicating and trying to like see each other and trying to determine where this person's at. But a lot of that type of content, whether it is mindset, and I'm hoping we can like get deeper on like, okay, what are they actually talking about with mindset? Like, here's this word. It's like, well, what am I doing? What is that actually doing? And as to answer this question, a lot of it can just be delivered in a conversation. So that sometimes that is as simple as a phone call. Usually it is like a web-based call, Zoom, or whatever people are using. And I find you can get a lot of the point across, and I can also receive kind of the where the client's at. just from the conversation. And video is better, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
You can still catch on those body language cues, things that
yeah,
would be lost if it was just a phone call. So in that regard, you're right. COVID really didn't impact things other than the positivity of, all right,
yeah,
I don't have to travel, so I have more time with a client. That's really
totally.
cool.
And for me, like I love taking notes and I love tracking things when I have clients. So, and I didn't realize this at the time, but back 8 years ago when I'm with a client, I have my clipboard with my piece of paper. Like I'm pretty limited. I have to write everything down, right? By pencil or pen, whether it's
Mhm.
scheduling or programming or notes about, okay, this person's body doesn't feel good doing this, or like whatever the thing is. Whereas now, I usually have I'll have all their files open. So then like during the conversation, I might be making a note, but then I can quickly go back and like summarize it, give them the detail of it, present them with what we talked about, adjust the program, adjust the habit formation, like whatever it is. It's just easier to systematize things. I think that's really the word I'm looking at here versus just
Mhm.
everything being on paper. Because
Yeah.
like the truth is, I'm a really unorganized person. Like for the most part, I'm like an artist. I'm just messy. There's shit everywhere usually. So when I have systems like that, I'm like, okay, good. I can just use this system. Don't change it. Don't adjust it. Don't try to
Mhm.
reinvent the wheel. The
It
system
works.
works.
Yeah, it's not
Don't
broken.
touch anything. Yeah. 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 So that's
Yeah.
that's been really helpful in that realm.
That's
And
awesome.
Yeah.
and with those systems too, like that was definitely a learning experience. Like you said, you learned that you were a little bit of a messy person, and how do you create a space for you to be able to give your best performance to your clients? So I know that you just said, like, what is, everyone talks about mindset and what does that word mean? Well, when we go through all these systems, like before you figured out this plan that worked well for you, how did you get into this shift into this kind of challenge, and how did you deal with it whenever things got difficult?
Well, that's a cool question because I actually remember the moment that I shifted, and it was an entrepreneur who told me, he said, it's not the people that are, it's not the people that have hit rock bottom or the people that are doing really well that I'm worried about. It's the people in the middle just coasting.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy fuck. I was like, you know what? I am coasting. I'm feeling somewhat comfortable in my life, financially, where I'm living with my relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was just okay. And I think I pretty quickly realized that for me, feeling okay, I was actually like, I was not keeping up with the trend. I was actually slipping backwards.
Yeah.
So I was on a trajectory I couldn't even see. Right? It's like keeping up with inflation. Like inflation's not level, it's a chronic, a constant up,
Mhm.
Right.
3%, whatever it is, depends. But like I was just maintaining like this, hitting the horizon, hitting a straight line across, and I was actually falling behind because I wasn't keeping up. So that was the moment where I was like, I need to invest in business because I'm not a good business person. I don't have the skill. I co-owned a gym for 4 years. I learned some things, but I don't know how to run a business, right? I don't. So
Mhm.
I invested in a business program. I learned quite a bit from that. Um, and I started just to try things. And that's a pretty huge conversation because I was trying so many things. I was wearing like 15 hats all of a sudden. I was
Yeah.
like learning about social media marketing. I was learning about email funnels. I was learning about landing pages. I was learning about funnels. I was learning about programs to work out, programs for actual programming for clients. I was working on how to systematize habits, how to deliver meal plans, how to track calories, how to take notes on mindset. Like there was just like there was
So
so
you have
oh
your right, you have your skill that
yeah,
you are well versed at and
yeah,
still, learning and exploring. But now on
sure,
top of that, you have to learn this whole other business side of things that had to be daunting. So
totally super daunting.
how did that translate in in terms of like what you shared with your clients? Was that something that, because I know you talked a lot about being vulnerable, is that something that you shared your vulnerability with your clients, as a like reinforcement?
Yeah, partly, and it's dependent a little bit on the client. So I do have some clients that are younger men that it's basically in like this coaching mentor role. So clients like that where we do talk about business, I'll straight up be like, guys, like, by the way, I don't have this fully figured out. I'm giving you resources based on people I'm learning from, but like I'm not going to teach you organization skills when I'm like I don't really have a good manage, at the time if I'm like I don't my shit's all over the place.
Right,
Um
right.
so vulnerability is key, as you said, and yeah, I always try to be vulnerable with clients. So there's lots of examples of that, but in terms of kind of the business and like wearing so many hats suddenly and like struggling to be organized and struggling with like fucking payment processors and like the whole gambit. Yeah. And I think then the great thing was like, as I'm sharing, like, hey, I'm wearing some new hats that I got to see how they fit. People understand that. Like my clients are like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, get back to me later or take your time, like whatever it was. Like, I think
Yeah.
people gave me some grace because it's obvious. It's like, okay, you're going through something completely different. Fair enough.
Showing that vulnerability, something that I was thinking about, have you ever seen, I forget what the TV show is, but it's fitness trainers that gain 40 pounds so they can lose the weight with their clients. And most of the time these fitness and trainers have always been fit their whole entire life. So when they finally gain the 40 and try to lose it, they realize what their clients are going through. So the fact that you kind of can to match that vulnerability, like we're doing this together, it's really powerful. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like you can have all the knowledge, but if you don't show people how you can like, hey, I'm also going to be experiencing these things and we're going to work through these together. Now it's like a collaboration compared to like, okay, I have a teacher and I just have to listen to this person. It feels less connected if it's like that. So I really like the vulnerability piece that you give. And with that, I was curious, since I know that you have your tattoo on your chest called Suffer, I mean, not called Suffer, it is the word suffer. Um, is that part of something that you share with your clients? And like, what does that specifically mean, anyways?
Hmm. Yeah, so I had a client that interviewed me on a podcast a couple years back, and they were like, this is the hardest working tattoo I've ever seen. Because I was
Mhm.
explaining, like they just got it right away. They're like, I like that, and I'll tell you why. And it was in the realm of, I understand that you're talking about discomfort as something to embrace. We have this well, there's a book, Comfort Crisis. Yeah.
Mhm.
I could have written that essentially. I didn't. He's a better writer, but I was like, I read that and I'm like, yeah, yep, yep, I agree.
Mm.
So they touched on the fact of like embracing discomfort, stretching the comfort zone, but also stretching or I should say, changing the relationship we have with discomfort. We were talking about the weather earlier, for instance. It's like so many fucking people complain about the weather. It's like we're not even homeless, the people that are complaining. Like I had to put a sweater on. I'm like, is that something to complain about? I have a sweater to put on and I
Right,
feel
right,
fine. Like,
right.
so if it first started, or I first realized that this was a powerful, uh we'll call it like a mantra or something for me, when I was training before I met you guys, you included, Sarah. I was training for a 24-hour run, and a friend of mine, we created this challenge. We ended up training for this challenge that led us to run on true form runners. So for those of you guys listening that don't know what that is, it's just a non-motorized treadmill. They have a bend like this. They're 30% harder than treadmills. You don't plug them in. And we had a whole crew set it up so that it could actually be a sensory deprived zone. So it was a completely black box. You weren't allowed headphones. You weren't allowed a watch. You're not wearing a heart rate monitor. We had a tech team remove the monitor so we couldn't see our distance. We couldn't see our time. We didn't know our watts. We didn't know any information. There's no biometric data. During the training for this, I started to realize that this is a lot about my relationship with comfort, with discomfort, with doing hard things, with embracing hard things, with complaining, with needing support, with figuring out how I react and respond in like adversity, creating adversity to then experiment with how I am. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, live pretty easy-ish lives. There's always
Mhm.
things that we struggle with, but again, like I have warm clothes, I have a roof, I have good food to eat, I make some money, I have good relationships, I'm loved, I'm cared for. It's a pretty easy life for me. So that I don't end up like a fucking soup sandwich, like softer than hell, I have to
Mhm.
create some adversity so that I can become something that's a little bit more resilient or has a higher capacity. And suffer is the reminder it's okay to do hard things. Like it doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just like
Mhm.
it's okay. It's inevitable. So it was hard. So I'm cold. So I'm lonely. So I'm angry. It's like it's okay.
Mhm.
Feel those
Yeah.
things. That's okay.
All I was gonna say is I call that we're all domesticated. We don't know how to survive outside. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
we're like the house cat. We don't know where we get in the litter box. We don't know where to shit. We spin around for 40 seconds. It's like,
Yeah,
Pretty much.
it's like
yeah,
you said, our base level of needs are satisfied. So to that degree, it's like everything that we tend to experience from a discomfort level, it's usually not life-threatening.
yeah,
It's usually not earth-shattering either. Not to say that those things don't happen, but on a day-to-day basis, it's a great reminder to realize that, well, I guess it could always be worse.
yeah. And I mean, it will be worse, like for all of
Right.
us, right? And it's
Yeah, and
like,
building that resilience, like you pointed out,
yeah,
is crucial to
yeah.
not only for you to have it, but for also for other people that may be relying on you, that you have that resiliency.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. And I will say, like, back to the vulnerability conversation, like I don't have it all figured out, and I'm not the kind of guy that just like can take everything either. Like, truthfully, like I think if I didn't train, if I didn't work on this mindset stuff, I'd probably be below average in a lot of ways. I'd probably be the guy eating like egg McMuffins, like complaining about his life. Like, truthfully, I'm not that far away from that. And it's like the fact that I realize that I'm like, okay, you know what? Like I am more similar to more people than some people might think or than I think. I'm like, I'm not that far away. I'm not too many bad decisions away from being in a real tight position. So it's like it's humbling in a sense. It's very
Mhm.
humbling.
So, I mean, you mentioned that conversation that was kind of like the turning point. So it's almost like you had this inside you and just really needed someone external to speak it to life, but you also received it really well.
Yeah.
So it begs the question, was there something already in place, a mentor, a friend, something that would have kind of set the table for you to be able to receive it? Because it said, like, the teacher presents itself once the student is ready, right? So you happen to be ready at that moment. I'm sure there were a few things that, like I said, set the table for that, and I'd love to explore that if you can pinpoint that journey.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with just describing kind of like what my mental and physical environment was like. So I think
Sure.
some people can relate to this, but so I chose not to get vaccinated. So right there's a lot of differences. Um was going through a really challenging breakup with my now ex. We have a great relationship now, I want to say that, but at the time it was terrible for both of us. So we were living together, trying to find separate places. We had just moved across the country away from our families, and we had a 1.5-year-old son. So, yeah, maybe like not, is that the best thing to do? At the time, she really wanted to move across, and I wanted to see if I could be resilient enough to accommodate that, knowing that we weren't going to be together. I knew that. That's okay. I wasn't holding on to that. I used it as a challenge. I say, can I leave everything? In a lot of ways, can I leave everything, even if it's, you know, or keeping distances at now a relationship, or pardon me, keeping relationships at that distance? Can I be okay with shifting across the country and kind of restarting, as I said, with the training, that my job changed, relationships changed, support changed. So we had not being vaccinated. I wasn't allowed in gyms. Started working out in the shitty living or laundry room that I had with no windows. It felt like a jail cell, to be honest. It was brutal. For me, it was brutal. Good reminder, but brutal. Basically just knew my son, you know, first time dad, a single dad at that point, going through a hard relationship, in kind of a shitty apartment. And I think realizing that I didn't want to be in the same position I was at that moment. Like, I didn't want to be there too long. So I needed something to change. So back to your question, or back to your kind of statement, you're like, you know, you heard that advice, the teacher presents itself when the student's ready. I think I was in a lot of pain, like, quote unquote, like I didn't like the position I was in. I knew why I was in that position, and I wanted to do what I could to progress out of that position. And there was a lot of things I was trying to progress. So the thing I did was I got back to like maintaining what I could, which was like fitness. So I set a
Control the
training.
controllables.
Yeah, that's a very good way to say it. The controllables. So food, sleep, stress. Wasn't doing a super good job of that. I had a lot of challenges. The one major decision I made, which was the first time I ever made this decision, was joining a men's group. And that has been paramount. And the reason that came about was, again, I was open to receiving. I knew I wasn't in a great position. My ex's friend came over one night. This is like 3 weeks after moving here to Victoria. And he's like, dude, you should join a men's group. And I'm like, great. I like, this is my low point. This is my new low point. Great. Let's join them and see what happens.
Right.
Right. 3 years later, been going every week. I see a lot of support. We get accountability. I'm there to help the other men. That's been like paramount. So yeah, I think it's just like realizing internally, I was like, wow, this is hard for me. Like, this is really tough. And I don't have to continue to deal with these things in the same way. I can become more resilient. So I can be in it, become more resilient, get more support, be vulnerable, ask for support. And in a lot of ways, like, this is the adversity that I was looking for. Like, I created this adversity. I put myself in this position to see, hey, can I get to a point where I'm feeling good again?
So it's interesting because, you know, I had, you know, a bunch of notes, things, high level points like, hey, this would be great talking points if the conversation should lull. But it's funny because things are just flowing in a way that I would have never imagined, because you're talking about how you hit this point and you're like, screw it. I asked for this. I wanted to build my resilience. And you made a statement when I first got to meet you. And it was like, obstacles are really just opportunities. So, it, you know, if more people could understand that, I think we'd all be better off for it, right? You took what could have been like an opportunity to spiral out of control even further,
Sure.
instead of just staying on the straight. You know, you could have actually been on a decline, even though, you know, to your analogy, you know, if you are just maintaining, you are declining, but it
Yeah.
could have gotten much worse. And
100%.
instead of, you had this mindset shift of time out. I asked for this. This is an opportunity, not just an obstacle. And I love that.
Yeah. 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 It's a visceral feeling for me, actually, thinking about that, thinking about how I felt for most days, like how I felt in those moments was not very good.
So was that something that you brought immediately to the men's group, like, hey, I'm in this? Like, some people are very open from Jump Street.
Yeah.
Others, they need, to feel that level of comfort first.
Yeah.
Where were you at, and then what did you see as the biggest hurdle for most guys that were part of this group?
Well, I was in a lot of like pain, right? I was, as I've just said. So I went in and I was like, you know what? I don't know any of these guys. I don't owe them anything. They don't owe me anything. Why don't I just be fucking completely vulnerable and see what happens?
Mhm.
And so I went in and I explained, had whatever I had 20 minutes to say who I was, what I'm going through, what brought me to men's work. That's usually the question that you get asked when you join. And it's like, okay, here we go. And I said exactly, what I said to you guys. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're welcome here. It's like, great.
So the vulnerability was validated. So you're like, all
Yeah,
right, great. Thank
yeah,
God,
yeah,
thank God I took that leap. And
yeah. And
excellent.
I think, another angle to this is like one of the reasons I did that is because I wanted to feel different, but I wanted to feel better. And I knew that I could be a better version of myself. So I had that belief of like, and I know there's a lot of people listening that feel that way, but I know there's a lot of people listening that don't feel that way, that don't actually see that it's possible to feel better or to perceive themselves
Mhm.
as someone different or more grateful or more in integrity or more disciplined or more fit or more healthy or more, business savvy, whatever the hell it is, a better parent. Maybe it's all those things. I think for me, I was like 100 fucking percent I can be better. And I almost always believe that about myself. So
Mhm.
that's usually not the issue, is the self-belief. It's usually just like lunging myself or like catapulting myself into rooms like a new men's group where I'm like, cool, here's where I'm at. Like, this is where I might be lacking. This is what I'm pretty good at, but I'm here to be helped and then to help when I know how that happens.
Mhm.
Vulnerability is fucking magical when you're in the face of people, when you're in front of people that
When
understand what it is.
Right,
Mhm.
understand, have good intentions, and also,
Yeah.
have the tools, the skill set to actually help.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it could be a train wreck. So,
Could be a
you
train
know,
wreck. You're right. Good point. Good
but but
point.
but 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 thankfully, it was an opportunity that was a positive opportunity. You took that leap. It's just, uh, I bring this up because, I have friends and family members where they have experienced, like, I'm going to be, I've witnessed them being vulnerable, um, to people that great intentions don't have skill set to address the needs that are being brought to them, but also don't have the emotional intelligence to say, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to help you find it. And I
Right.
think
Mhm.
that's key, is like people understanding, like, okay, don't just leave somebody out, waiting in deep waters. Just, try and help them, or help them find the help that they need. So
100%. Yeah.
vulnerability is key. It is
Yeah.
certainly key. And we, as wanting to be positive members of society, should also remember that if someone is being vulnerable to us, we have an obligation to steer them if we can,
Yeah.
or help them find the help that they need.
Yeah. I think that's a great message. Yeah.
I wanted to add too with just being able to be vulnerable. I think another issue that people have with being vulnerable is the judgment from others. I see it all the time where people will purposely not do behaviors they want because maybe somebody's watching. I'm not going to do it right. It's going to be silly. And I think pairing the vulnerability of allowing you to be yourself and having a quote unquote judgment free zone, those two are challenging to have if you feel like everybody is going to be viewing you a certain way. And something that's really powerful, and you kind of got to notice it when you moved across country. I also get to experience a lot while traveling in this RV. Nobody knows me here. I'm like, I can be exactly who I am. And I will never see this person again. And it's really powerful because now when I'm hanging out with my friends and family, I realize like, let me just be myself. But once again, being vulnerable and just taking that judgment away, it's just so powerful, allowing you to be yourself. And I think pairing those two things together, plus like what you were saying about controlling controllables and not being able to control specific things, which it is in my book, page 25 in confidence.
Nice.
I was like, we were talking about that. I was like, that's a perfect way to understand what are specific things that you can control. How can you be vulnerable in those spaces? How do we remove that judgment? And the things we can't control, we can just kind of leave that as a space right now. It's just like, okay, if I can't be vulnerable right now and I'm having a hard time with judgment, but it's allowing you to at least break apart from 100% not being able to be yourself. Maybe it starts out 75-25, or actually, yeah, the uncontrollables I meant to say, and then 50-50, and then eventually I'll turn 100% where maybe I can control all these things. So I just thought that was really powerful, like adding the vulnerability with the judgment piece, because man, I wish people would get out of their shell a little bit. And it's difficult because we always think, somebody's going to judge us.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it's not all the time or do we even get judged. It's just like that fear, right? Like the fear of
Exactly.
what's the stat? Like the biggest fear in the world is speaking to public, and the second is dying or something.
Yeah.
Like
I
fear of
believe it.
Something
judgment.
along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, we as humans, we're scared of other humans. We're scared of being judged, and I think it's a superpower, and maybe a kind of a rare superpower to be truly okay being authentic and just letting it slide off your back. I don't know too many people that can be that have been able to connect in that way
Yeah.
to themselves. Yeah.
We can just all be like Adam Sandler, where he's just wearing scrubs outside, eating a jar of pickles. He's like, I'm famous and I don't even give a crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
great.
why can't we all be like that?
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Have a fermented food of your choice and wear some comfort clothing. Yeah. Yeah.
Be you, be comfortable. Who cares who judges? That's not the point. As long as you're happy, that's
Yeah.
all that matters.
That's
Well,
right.
and the great thing about judgments, it's like it says more about the person judging anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but it's usually interesting. So if I'm like, why the fuck is Adam Sandler like that? It's like, well, what inside of me is triggering? Am I not
Right.
okay looking a certain way, or am I not okay presenting similar to that? Or it's very
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
People
Judgment's
lash
big.
out. People lash out because they're upset with how far they've gone along, like how much they've done in their life. And I think it comes a lot with age. I remember somebody asked me my age, and since I'm a female, they're like, I'm sorry to ask you this, but for me to get like a hunting license, they had to ask my age. I'm just like, I'm proud to be 30. Like I've accomplished everything that I wanted to, but I understand why he asked that, because a lot of people are like, oh no, like I haven't accomplished what I wanted to. And then when other people thrive, they get upset that they haven't done anything with their lives, which probably isn't true. They've probably done a lot in their life, but it just feels like they haven't. So they get this
Sure.
persona about themselves, and now they think other people are judging them. And it's just like, do you realize there's just this random voice in your head that's creating your own chaos? It's
Yeah.
not, they might not even be saying anything, but you're over here creating this alternative world, and
Yeah.
it's hard for you to like open up your eyes that that's not happening.
Totally. One of the most humbling things I heard recently was I was listening to a podcast on body language, and I thought until that, and
Yeah.
this is one resource, but anyway, you'll understand the point. The study was like, we're about 30% accurate with what we gauge based on body language. And I'm like, well, that's not very fucking accurate then, is it?
No.
So if I think when I'm on that I'm going to be 30% up to 30% accurate, then I'm totally creating realities all over the place. So that are not necessarily even real, right?
Yeah, like I don't want you to be
All
my
right.
guest right now.
So
Yeah,
that's
like
it.
yeah.
All right. So that's if you're only monitoring. So I understand this. That's if you're only monitoring visual cues. That's
Right.
so
Yeah.
one component. So it really does highlight the fact that if you take everything, the words, the inflection, the tone, right? The body
Yeah.
language, it all paints a picture
Yeah.
that if even one component goes away, it's kind of like, something that gets misunderstood, misinterpreted, that's a text message or an email, because
Yeah.
you've now missed two of at least three components that even the most skilled writer, trying to find perfect words, if that other person doesn't receive those words the same way, because maybe their vocabulary is limited or vice versa, yeah, there's bound to be problems. So
Yeah.
wow, that's incredible. 30%.
Something like that. Yeah. Don't quote me on it, but I remember it being like, whoa, thought it was a lot more than that. Like, I thought we had this down to a bit of a science, not a bit of a,
Right,
hypothesis, but
right,
Yeah.
right.
And I kind of want to transition into something slightly different, but off of this topic, when it talks about body language and not physically, I meant verbally, what we're saying, I know that when you have your son, you take complete time off and you don't
Mhm.
want him to see you on your phone. And I know that this isn't like you verbally talking, but it's you showing a certain way of life to make sure that he can stay on track and be his true self. So I did want to talk about that a little bit on how you present yourself to your son so he can get the best childhood for himself.
oh, here we go. The juice.
Yeah. Yep. The
So
tea.
the tea. Yeah. The tea, whatever we have. I'm doing some cacao, something. So if I can answer this question accurately or interpret the question accurately, you're saying, what am I doing as a father to set my son up for success, quote unquote.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be verbally because that's why
Yeah.
I was bringing up like you don't work, you try to stay off your
Yeah.
phone as much as possible to
Yeah.
present yourself, and that is a body language right there.
Yeah. I think just to take a step back a little bit, like I have my own perceptions of how I want to be as a dad. And I
Mhm.
also understand that he is not necessarily going to see me that way. So there's
Right.
that. And I'm also learning from other people a lot with parenting. I remember when my ex, his mom was pregnant, our doula said, "Are you scared to be a father?" And I was like, "No, I'm not at all." And honestly, that was like, I think I just wasn't totally in touch with it. I thought I was going to be really confident, and I actually realized I'm like, there's a lot of huge struggles, like
Yeah.
truthfully. So there's me being vulnerable because I actually thought I wasn't going to have any issues with it, and I know that actually probably sounds ridiculous for any
Well,
parents. It's like,
it, I think it. If I can interpret a little bit here,
sure,
as a dad, it's like, all right, in the moment, you're like, no, I am not afraid of the challenges and
right,
obstacles and opportunities. That's not what you're afraid of. Yeah, you're going to have a bunch, and those are terrifying. Some people are terrified just at the notion of having to deal with that.
yeah,
So
Mhm.
I would venture to guess that, yeah, you were probably very enthusiastic about being a dad because of all the wonderful opportunities that make those difficult times worth every minute.
yeah,
So, it, but it is hard. You're right.
yeah,
Tons of examples of my own personal life
yeah,
that I still struggle with as a dad. But there are far more positive things to look at, whether it's memories, or whether it's things that have yet to happen that I know are opportunities. So
yeah. I appreciate your
yeah,
perspective on that, Lou. I think that
thanks.
probably is more accurate. I didn't think I was just going to nail everything all the time, but to feel, again, it's back to like the tattoo or the obstacle being the way or the growth mindset or whatever. Like there are going to be obstacles. Having a kid is 100% lots of obstacles in a sense, but obviously there's so much beauty and gratitude and joy and life that we experience beyond that. To your question, Sarah, I try to look at it like, well, I think a lot of dads look at it like this. when our kids are young, my son's almost 5, so he's still very young. And like, I am such an important part of his life. Like I don't know, but I'm at least fucking 40% of like who he thinks about in a sense.
Yeah.
So we co-parent. So he either sees me or he sees his mom. So it's not often where he's actually seeing both of us interact together. There's little bits, but like in the grand scheme, it's like just daddy or just mommy. So I think there's almost more responsibility from that. I could be wrong. This is just how I'm processing the thought because it's just me. So it matters. I make it matter. What I do matters. So if he sees me on my phone, and not that he hasn't seen me on my phone, there's times where I'm on my phone, but if I'm not intentionally on my phone, he's going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm distracting myself with whatever and anything, any vice, like he will notice that. He might not be able to articulate what that is, but he's going to feel that because I think children are extremely intuitive. And I want to try to be, it's not even a want, I think I need to fucking do that. I think that's my responsibility for him, to him, to say, man, like, this is me talking to him when he's older. Like, man, just so you know, like, I tried really hard. I know I fucked up in a lot of ways. That's inevitable. You're traumatized in these different ways as it's inevitable, but like, just so you know, like, I fucking tried. And I think that's really important. And I think in a lot of ways, like, that's one of the few things that I can do. Like, I can love him and I can just try. And in some ways, there's probably not too many more things I could add to that list.
No, I remember those are
Yeah.
big things that you pointed out: being present, being intentional, and living with integrity. So
Yeah.
knowing, full well that your actions are going to have a lasting effect, and so I better be very intentional and have the integrity of, like, what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm trying to teach other people. I'm also going to live that.
Yeah. And even down to like my internal dialogue, like it's kind of like taking stock of like all the different relationships in life, like the relationship I have with myself, with my son, with my ex, with his mom, with other parents, with random people on the street. It's like I do think these things matter. And that's not to say like, I suck the fun out of everything and everything's serious, but what you mentioned the presence, like two of my goals in life, if I was to be known for anything in life, I would hope that I would be remembered partly for being intentional and being present. That's not everything. I want to be known as someone that's fun and a friggin' goof and musical and whatever, a good role model, etc. But like, if I only had two, I'd probably choose those two. And the reason I would choose presence is because I think when I feel someone is present and engaged with me, it feels vastly different than when someone is not present. Like, it feels so different, and
Very authentic.
it's so authentic, right?
Yeah.
And then having intention is like living life with purpose. It's interrupting moments of autopilot, and it's like injecting, like, hey, I'm trying to live this moment, versus just like being a victim in life or letting it slide by or getting distracted a lot, which again, like, I am all those things in a sense, right? Or I do those things in a sense, but it's okay, how often can I be intentional about this thing? Even if it's like I'm intentionally going to watch fucking TV and lay down, but it's like, that was a decision I made.
Right.
It's taxing as fuck.
Yeah.
but
Yes.
but I think it's worth
But
it.
to your point, you have to make a choice sometimes, like
Yeah.
to recharge the batteries. But as long as that's an intentional choice and not something where you're just mindlessly going through something
Yeah.
because it's easy, it's convenient, it's
Yeah.
comfortable. It's
Right.
as opposed to like, no, no, no. I'm feeling a certain way. That's my body speaking to me saying you need to recover. Your mind is overwhelmed, whatever it is, emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever, where you're like, okay, I'm checking in with my feelings, and yeah, I need this is an intentional decision versus I deserve to take, a couple of
Yeah.
days off, and then you just turn to mush.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and I don't have it all nailed, but that's kind of where I'd go with this. And actually, you know what? I want to mention something because around the idea of being growth minded, being present, being intentional, embracing the discomfort, these types of things. I actually had a client give a testimonial, and I posted a video. So if anyone follows me on social media, you'll see it. But in this video, he says, I said, in 30 seconds, explain kind of where you are from where you were. And he said, I'm going to read this out. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So
Yeah.
he said, when we first started, I used to avoid difficult things. Now I look for them. Why? Because doing the hard but right thing gives me, he said, a satisfaction that the easy path never could. It's not about perfection, it's about growth. And growth often comes disguised as comfort. And I was like,
Oh,
dude, I'm glad that you realize that. I think that's going to be an extremely helpful North Star for you.
yeah.
And for a lot of people, hopefully hearing it for the first time, through this opportunity, but also, on your website and socials,
Yeah.
wherever you have it posted. I think that it's important, for people to hear the impact, especially something so profound as that.
Yeah. I get fired up from that when just even people, I don't even need to know them. I get so fired up when people discover that, they're capable, or there's a improvement in self-confidence, or there's something where they're like, you know what, like improvement in self-esteem, like I can do this,
I
or
think people forget that when they were learning how to walk or learning how to talk or write, those were really difficult things. And it's not like it just came very fluent, when you're 1, 2, 3 years old. And when we're adults, we think that, I guess we kind of forget that. And I know that our memories aren't always there when we're that old. I mean, when we're that young. But that's a thing that I like that quote that your client said, because it's like discomfort is going to be everywhere. I know, like you talked about, what's one of the scariest things for people. Public speaking it's one of my things. I know that, but that's why I do a podcast, so I can grow past those certain things. Are they always going to be great? I listen to these recordings. I'm like, man, my voice is terrible. And why did I say that? And all these things, but
yeah,
yet I'm posting them. I'm proud of them. And it's going
yeah,
to be uncomfortable for a little while, and eventually it isn't going to be. So how can I challenge that even more? And I liked how your client said that. It's just like, I want that discomfort. I really appreciate having that discomfort. And
yeah,
no, that's a great testimonial.
yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
there's a level of like, there's a side of gratitude in that too. It's like, good, I get to experience some discomfort. Like it's maybe
Mhm.
to some people it's a strange kind of twist, but there's a lot of power and there's comfort in realizing that we have things in life that we can be grateful for. We can choose to be grateful for anything we want, whether it's
Right.
pain or loss or celebration or whatever the thing. Like we always have choice over that. And I think in some ways, if we can set ourselves up, like I try to do a lot of the time, to be grateful for discomfort, for pain, for things like that, that are just like in our day to day. My thought and my hope is that it puts us in a better position for when we're faced with real loss or real
Mhm.
pain. Like, I have a friend that was paraplegic now as of 2 years ago. Like that's what I mean, like stuff like that, where it's like real loss or real confronting shifts in our identities, or, we lose a sibling, we lose a parent, we lose a child, any of those things. I haven't experienced too much of that. Haven't lost my parents, haven't lost my son. And it's like, it's all inevitable at some part of the lineup. So versus avoiding all that stuff, I think if we can set ourselves up to just be grateful for what we have here, it's probably going to be a better quality of life at the same time.
Very well put. I appreciate you explaining that. And now, Lou, I wanted to ask you, do you have anything else you wanted to ask before we ask him who his next guest he wants to have and what question he'd like to ask them?
Yeah, absolutely. I know, being conscious of your time, we're very grateful that you carved out time for us, but I know that you are on a time schedule. So real quick, parting thoughts. What would you tell, first time listeners that don't know, anything about you, but obviously now they know, your overall, holistic optimization coach and things that you've experienced personally, and what you bring, the interactions with the men's group, all those are wonderful. In the beginning, you did mention also, about some biohacking, functional blood testing, things like that. So if there's anything that you would like to, like, parting thoughts, would like to, listeners to know, services that you provide, shameless plug away, man. We're
Go
glad
for
to
that.
have you on here. So
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate your guys' time and the opportunity as well. The first thing I'd say is actually advice, and usually I ask ask if I can give advice, but I don't know who's listening, so I can't ask. I would say either believe in yourself or find someone that will believe in you. Number one. And now to answer your question, we are offering something called the Deep Health Protocol. I have a small team of people on my side, and we're helping a lot of entrepreneurs. We're helping a lot of people create some real positive health change in their life. And we are doing that through doing gene testing, blood testing, stool testing. And then we help people, because we are coaches at the same time, implement all of those things that might have to change or we might offer, so that people can truly optimize their health. So if people are interested in more about that, they can DM me, or email me on any social media platform. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok. And on my website is joshchessman.com. So any of these things, I'm hoping to have some more free resources. I have a free ebook people could download right now. It's like 50 pages. It's not even like a short thing. And it talks a little bit more about my story. If you can, be inspired by that or relate to it in some way, that could be a great resource for you. And that's available on the website or on any of my socials. And I don't know. I think that, like, self-belief's at the core. So it's just like, if you don't believe in yourself right now and you have the vulnerability to find someone that might believe in you, that's going to really fucking help. It's going to make all decisions. It's going to steer a lot of your future decisions based on that one component.
Yeah. And if you can't believe in yourself, or you can't find somebody to believe in you, a nice little middle ground is finding a neutral thing that you can always believe in. So let's go off of racing. It's like, maybe you won't win, you won't get podium, you might not get top 10, but you know that you always cross that finish line. So that could be a neutral thought, like, I believe that I finish every race. So if anybody has a hard time with that, that's always a nice little, like, okay, maybe I don't have to find something specific yet, but I can believe in this middle thought right now.
Well said from the mindset coach. That's good.
I know. It's like, it's my job or something.
Yeah. You should, make a profession out of this. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Sarah, you wanted to close out with our traditional question?
Yeah. So what we do, we always ask our guests somebody that might be their role model. And within that role model, if they would be willing to be our guest for our next episode, what question would you ask them so we can ask them that question for whenever they are our guest?
So do you want me to tell you who this person is first, or tell you the question?
Yeah, who the person is first.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put up a close friend of mine named Ethan Ellis, who's a close friend of mine. I was in a men's group with him. He runs a men's group. He's a coach. He's a father, a single dad. We're similar in a lot of ways, but the one of the gigantic voids that I think he fills in this world is presence, and that he is aspiring. I'm inspired by his ability to be present. And when I said presence, he's like one of the few people I talk about where I'm like, it's possible to be there. So the question I would ask him is what it feels like for him in his life to be present and or lack presence, and how he becomes more present, because he has a huge impact on people around him. And I'm like super grateful to experience any time with this person. He's a really close person to me.
I'm sure it's going to
Awesome.
be a very insightful response to that question. So I'm eager to hear that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hoping he can
Josh,
do it.
thank you again so much for all the insight, sharing, vulnerability. Really, really loved having the opportunity to chat with you today. And yeah, that's thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. We've been waiting very long to be able to do this, but we got there, man. We finally did it.
That's right. Yeah, it happened. I had faith. I knew you'd come through eventually,
Yeah.
right?
I had to get the certification. That was a lot
Yeah.
of my time of just studying and
Yeah.
just crying, honestly.
Yeah.
But
Good. Yeah, you
yeah,
forced yourself through the adversity.
I did. I did. That was the hardest thing I could have done, and I'm so happy that I did. So, anyways,
done.
Josh, it was great. Great chatting with you again. Until next time, guys, keep breaking barriers, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Nice.
Joining us on this exhilarating journey through resilience, determination, and the pursuit of excellence. As we wrap up this episode of Breaking Barriers Beyond the Finish Line, remember that the finish line is really just the beginning. Keep pushing your limits, breaking down walls, and reaching for the stars. So whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, or simply someone seeking inspiration, know that you have the power to go beyond what you thought was possible.
If you enjoyed today's episode, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more captivating stories, expert insights, and practical tips. And don't forget to share this podcast with fellow dream chasers and barrier breakers. Until next time, this is Grip and Lou signing off. Keeping breaking barriers, my friends. Remember, it is not about the finish line. It's about what lies beyond it, and it starts with you.